Hello, hello, hello. Welcome everyone. How's everyone doing today? Happy New Year. I hope everyone had a good holidays. I'm still enjoying some time off for the next 2 weeks. Okay, I'm gonna try and get some Yakuza in. But I'm also gonna be trying to actually unpack my new place finally. And so my computer room, I've moved boxes from my room to my computer room, and so now my computer room feels very, very cramped. But I got a bed put together, and one of 3 calyx shells put together. Cats destroyed part of it, but I got it to work. Thankfully I'm not actually using the calyx shells as a bed frame. That was my original plan, but after working with it, I probably would have changed my mind anyways, because those feel so flimsy. Like, it probably works well for people who are skinny that weigh like 50 pounds, but that's not me. Yeah, so my holiday has been kind of a blur, to be honest with y'all. I'm not entirely. Bro visited, basically ignored him the 5 days he was here. At the most I could do so anyways. And then yeah, he got his ex though. Yeah, he does. I ignored him to the most of my abilities without being blatantly rude. But it is what it is. He was only visiting due to mom. If it was just me, he wouldn't have been here. I can't believe it. What? You went to cool model? Cool new model? You're the one who drew this model. Of course you know that. You know I have a new model. On this one. I looked if I didn't recognize my own goddamn art. Wow. I guess you're expecting me to be getting more PNG tubers elsewhere than you? Playing Animal Crossing as well. Hi, best spot. You're betting Animal Crossing as a butt. Okay. Picture A. I mean, unless I want to be Drake jacking off, I don't know. It looks good though. It does. The model or Drake. Both. It looks good. Yeah. Yeah, it's very good. Both. I'll draw one of you sometime if I get to use the cannon dick. I don't want to face first up someone's rectum, okay? think that's why there's no eyes on such a part normally. Moves to be played. So I get the porn shot, in other words. Okay. I am making only one resolution this year, and that is to try to set up a proper schedule, and more than just Monday, Tuesdays. The next couple of weeks will be kind of as I feel like it. Not as I feel like it, but more like I'll do it, but like I won't set a specific time to do it. Oh, and I looked over to your message Foppin and forgot the context. I'm like, balls just have eyeballs. Yes. The eyeballs are the balls? I know I forgot in context. This is how my brain works. It just forgets everything as soon as it's off my mind. I swear. Oh, I should have this running up too. Speaking of dicks, Drake's dick was good, yeah? Yeah, pretty good for somehow not never looks at real ones. I mean, yeah. Oh. Wait. There we go. I forgot to open the throwing system. Oh. Okay, yay, that works. Oh, I forgot I set up the chair. I do need to get there is one thing I do need to commission, is just proper screens, etc. I just need the money for that first. I have no money right now because this paycheck was the first paycheck that both mortgage payment and condo fee came off at the same time. That's not fun. So, 2 weeks ago, we finished chapter 3, where Alana and crew helped a group of children to a safe haven, but the princess Sayet's the place that they brought the children that couldn't accept them because now her father's dead, and basically people want her to either kill her or force her to marry them to solidify their claim for the throne. So Sayet and Buri is joining Alana on their quest to find the Dominion Jewel at the roof of the world. And it just so happened chapter 4 is titled Roof of the World. So here we go. That worked? That worked. Yay. Just needed to make sure that works. And that. Wait, no, that didn't work. Okay, that's. Okay, neat. Okay, that works better. Okay. I'm gonna quickly save that. Okay. It was just the key presses that was bothering me. Okay. Derp-de-dope. I'm also planning to try get some Final Fantasy and some Dead Daylight in somewhere along the way. Ah. Chapter 4, The Roof of the World. Once they left the border, the road began to climb. The nights were cold, although it was May. Alana was glad for Liam's warmth in their bedroll. Lyat was the first to don a fur-lined cloak, but the others soon followed suit. Lyat and Buri joined the dragon's morning exercises, learning Sheng hand-to-hand combat. Alana was surprised at how well she herself did. Evidently, the years of training for knighthood helped her now. She could feel the difference in her body when they practiced, as her muscles took to her smoothly from kick to blow and back. Filled with the optimism that comes from being physically fit, she mentally dared the roof to do its worst. The farther Thayet got from home, the more relaxed she was. She spoke about her childhood so frankly that Alana thanked Karam for his affectionate, if gruff, raising of her and Tom. Thayet was the daughter of a ruler who wanted a son. Only Klassen made her feel loved. It was Klassen who taught Thayet Khmeri ways. Klassen and Buri's family. I could never be as good as my queen. I can never be as good a queen as my mother, Thayet said. She grinned. Not that it makes a difference now. I won't be queen at all. Are you sorry? Alana wanted to know. She had been terribly frightened when John asked her to be his wife, knowing someday she would have to be his queen. A little, Thayet admitted. I'd like to change things. In Serain, for instance, women have no rights. Just those our husbands or fathers grant us. Estates and fortunes are held by men. Women can't inherit. That's barbaric, protested Alana. At home women inherit. Not titles, but they have lands. I am Miles' heir by law. It isn't common, but it happens. Tortel sounds wonderful, sighed Thayet. You'll find out when you get there, the knight promised. To herself she added, we'll all find out a thing or two when we get there. Especially John. She grinned in spite of herself. As the winter snows began to melt, traffic picked up. The roads were thick with miners, trappers, and merchant caravans. Alana's company passed herdsmen, driving flocks to the markets in the south. Farmers waved as they went by, their wagons filled with cheeses, brightly woven cloth, and chickens. Only the Doi tribesmen remained aloof. They were a people like the Khmer. Though less fierce than their western cousins, they were experts at survival at the roof. The most experienced guides were Doi, and the most furs came from their hidden villages. The travelers rode deeper into the highest mountains in their world, where snow still lay in scattered drifts and patches along the road. Alana battled rising impatience. For some reason, she felt that she ought to be on the way home. It would be foolish to turn back when they were so close, but she wanted to find the pass and do whatever it demanded, then leave. She tried to reach Tom or Jonathan with her magic, but it was impossible. Too much distance lay between them. She had been able to show Karam his response. She hadn't been able to show Karam his response since he'd left the convent. Perhaps Tom had the power to reach across the continent. She didn't. Several days after they had crossed the border, she fell in beside Karam and signaled him to drop back with her. When they were out of their friend's hearing, she asked abruptly, "Have you been joining with the voice?" She referred to a Bazir rite each day at sunset. All who were Bazir by adoption or birth entered into a magic communion with the voice of the tribes. The voice heard news through this link, judged disputes, counseled his people. Since their adoption into the Bloody Hawk, both Alana and Karam were able to enter into the joining, but Alana had never done so. At first, she refused out of a reluctance to let anyone, even someone as bound by duty and obligation as the voice, into her mind. Later, after Prince Jonathan had become the voice, and they had quarreled and broken off their romance, Alana had decided she certainly didn't want John to know how she thought and felt. At the same time, she knew Karam took part in the rite and had done so ever since his adoption into the tribe. Karam stared at her, startled. "He told me when we left for Parkane last fall that he never wanted me to talk about it, or say what I knew." Alana blushed. "Things are different now. Have you?" "Not since we set out for Marin." Alana was startled by the answer. "You joined almost every night we were there. Why'd you stop?" Karam shrugged. "It's different when you aren't amongst the tribe. It's lonesome. I've been trying, though, this last week. I knew you were worried about things at home." "And?" She couldn't keep some eagerness from her voice. "I'm sorry. I must be too far away. I haven't felt a thing." Alana smiled with an effort. "That's right. I'm probably worried about nothing." She caught up with Liam, pretending not to see Karam's troubled look. They entered Lumhu Valley the first week of May, and a day's ride brought them to the Twin Passes at its northern edge. An inn built solidly of wood and brick stood where the roads from the passes met. Snow lay in a tattered sheet in the meadow behind the buildings and on the sides of the northern pass. The northwest road was blocked with snow and ice. The pass itself was clogged. Alana swallowed as she looked at the second pass. Why did she have a feeling this was Chitral? The sky had been bleak all day. It darkened even more as they stabled the horses, and sleet began to fall as they entered the inn. "May blizzards is no joke," innkeeper said, bringing them mulled cider as they waited for rooms to be prepared. "It's what we pay for being up so high. You'd best settle in. The storm will close Lumu a week, maybe longer." "What about Chitral?" Liam asked. The man laughed. "Mother Chitral won't open till Beltane, and then only for the strongest. Snow never leaves. Him that told you Chitral's a good road was jested. I hope he never paid for the pleasure." He walked away, still laughing. "Now we know why no one took this jewel before." Buri sighed. Ayat stared wistfully into the fire. Alana huddled in her cloak, listening to the growing shriek of wind. Liam stayed downstairs while Alana went to their room to wash and dress and clean her clothes. Unpacking her bags, as it appeared they were going to stay for a while, she found the violet gown she'd carried since leaving Chorus. "How long's it been since I wore a dress?" she asked Faithful. The cat looked up from his grooming. "You wore that one when you stayed with George last fall." "That's right." She smiled at her reflection in the mirror. This was his favorite. It wasn't so wrinkled then, the cat remarked. Alana rang for the chambermaid. Thayet applauded when Alana entered the common room in the violet silk gown. The maid had smoothed most of the wrinkles. Uri whistled. Karam grinned. Liam surveyed her from head to toe. An odd look on his face. Well? Alana finally demanded, blushing from the other's reactions. Don't you like it? It's well enough, he said at last. Doesn't seem practical, though. Would she ever understand him? It isn't supposed to be practical. It's a dress. A dress that feels beautiful when you put it on. Feeling beautiful won't win a fight. His eyes were the pale gray that told her nothing about how he felt. I hardly think I'll fight anyone here, unless it's you, she snapped. Why can't I wear impractical garments every now and then? Do it yourself, he shrugged. I suppose you'll want earbobs next, and bracelets and other frippery. What comes then? A noble-born husband? And court intrigues? I'm female! Embarrassed, she realized Karam, Thayet, and Buri were trying to slip away. Why can't I wear a dress without you deciding I want to give up everything I am? Our road is rough and cold and muddy. Maybe you realize now that a knight-errant's life isn't as glorious as you expected. There was enough truth in this to hurt. He waved toward her gown. Maybe this is the Lady Alana you mean to show the prince when you go home. She walked out, knowing that if she spoke, she would cry. Running into her room, she slammed the door behind her. She did question her life as a roving knight, but not for the reasons he had claimed. Lana tore off the dress and threw it into the corner, following it with her shift and stockings. Her breeches and shirts were half on when she did begin to cry. Within seconds, her handkerchief was soaked. I hate him! She punched the bed for emphasis. I hate him! It isn't right that one person can hurt someone else this much. You scare him. Thayet closed the door behind her. Just when he thinks he understands you, you do something new. He can't put you in a neat little box the way he does the rest of us. I never asked to be something new to him. Alana wiped her eyes on her sleeve and finished buttoning her breeches. I never asked to be anything to him. It just happened. Thayet buttoned Alana's shirt. I have a feeling it just happened to Liam too. And that's what frightens him. Our dragon is the kind of man who likes to be in control of everything, particularly himself. Alana stared at Thayet. Did this explain why Liam feared magic? What's wrong with falling in love with me? What does wearing a dress have to do with any of this, Thayet? The princess smiled. Alana, when you wore that dress, you saw the daughter of a noble house. A woman whose family tree reaches back to the Book of Gold. Liam is common-born. I don't care about any of that. Why should he? He's very proud. Thayet dipped her handkerchief in Alana's water basin and wiped the knight's face. Some women can cry and look beautiful, she said dryly. You and I can't. I know, Alana sniffed. I get red and blotchy. When George told me he was, well, interested, I cared about his being a commoner. I even said, like, married like, or something like that. George didn't care. But Liam, what difference can rank make to the Shang dragon? There was a quiet rap on the door, and Liam came in. I was just leaving. Thayet said. She winked at Alana and went out, closing the door. His face scarlet, Liam watched the floor as he spoke. You shouldn't have taken the dress off. You look very pretty in it. I guess sometimes we get used to seeing a person a certain way. It was all the apology she would ever get from him. She knew. Alana patted the bed beside her, and Liam sat. I like dresses, she explained. If you come with us to Tortal, you'll see me wearing more of them. Just because I'm a knight doesn't mean I don't like pretty clothes. She grinned at him. I've even worn face paint. Sometimes. When he looked startled, she explained. You know, lip rouge and so on. I'm not ashamed of being female, Liam. Tentatively, he brushed Alana's hair with his hands. I didn't think you were. I never forget you're a woman, Lioness. His first kiss was gentle, the second passionate. Alana let him pull her into his arms, thinking, we should talk some more about why he was angry. I don't think lovemaking will settle anything. The dragon was so determined, however, that once again she put her questions aside to be dealt with later. Isn't that the way? It's always later. An hour later, as they dressed for dinner, she asked, Are any lionesses in Shang? Liam stretched, thinking. Not for 50 years. The women prefer names they don't think are flashy. That means not many lionesses or dragons. My master in kick fighting was the Wildcat. She always said if the men wished to attract attention, that was their problem. But mythic beasts are flashy by nature, I should think, protested Alana. Or don't you let women get to those ranks? Try to stop them, he grinned. Right now there's me, the griffin, also a man, and Kalia al-Jama, the unicorn. She's the most beautiful thing on 2 feet, all silk and steel and lightning. He tweaked her nose. Satisfied? Their group had dinner in the room Thayet and Barry shared. Not bored enough to go down to the common room yet. They were filled with a weird sense of mingled excitement and apprehension, but no one cared to talk about it. What could they do now? Wait until Chitral cleared? Alana didn't think she could wait that long. Though she didn't know why, she had a strong feeling that she had to get home. They amused themselves the next morning by catching up on chores that went neglected while they were on the road. Alana and Karam spent the hours after breakfast mending tack in the stables. Liam worked on his fighting gear as Thayet mended clothes and Buri cleaned the weapons. By lunchtime, all of them were ready for diversions. They went to the common room to see who else was kept there by the storm. 2 companies of merchants were present. One bore spices to the valley north of Lumuhu and Chitral. The other furs and had woven goods south to Port Udiapur. They were joined by 4 locals, 2 shepherds, a blacksmith, and a guide, and a group of 5 doi. The doi were as interested in Alana and her friends as the knight was in them. They exchanged looks with Alana throughout the meal. Liam, Alana whispered, trying not to seem obvious. The doi woman with the onyx in the middle of her brow. Who is she? Liam nodded gravely to the doi. They hid their eyes briefly, a sign the dragon said meant respect. A fortune teller, he said. He answered. The doi give them as much honor as you'd give a priest. Each fortune teller works differently. Some read tea leaves in a cup. Some tell your fortune from the stars. I had my fortune done once. It's interesting. She was surprised. You don't like magic? Liam shook his head. This isn't the same. No sparkly fire, nothing flying at you or things changing. A Doi looks at something real. One of the Doi men came over, covering his eyes briefly to show his respect for Liam. Dragon Man, we are the Rock Mouse people. I know the Rock Mouse, Liam replied. Our lady who sees, Mi-Chi, she knows the time lies heavy, out of the wind. If you wish, she will tell your hands. All of you. We will be honored, Liam stood, telling the others softly. It's an insult to say no. Ayet sat beside Mi-Chi when the fortune teller beckoned to her. I read hands, Mi-Chi said. Her voice was deep, her eyes dark and mysterious. It is said the hand you use to draw a bow or to stir a pot will reveal that part of you others can see. The yes used hand. That is your inner self. Ayet nodded. I'm right-handed. Mi-Chi took the priestess's left hand, holding it palm up. No one spoke as she ran her fingers over the lines in Ayet's palm. Curious, Alana probed with her gift. The fortune teller's magic was like Mazir magic. It was drawn from the land rather than from a source inside the person who wielded it. What do you see? Ayet wanted to know. Mi-Chi smiled at her. You have lost your chains only, great lady. Follow your heart. It leads you to a mighty place. And forget your home. You will never return there. Ayet rose and walked over to the hearth, keeping her face away from them. Buri watched her royal mistress for a moment before taking her place beside the Doi woman. Whatever it is you have to say, whisper it, alright? She asked as she offered her right hand. Mi-Chi agreed. And afterward, Buri refused to say what she'd been told. Karam was next, and he asked the same favor. When he stood, he was smiling. Whatever his own future held, he seemed to like the prospect. Mi-Chi smiled at Liam. You know your fate already, Dragon Man. Nothing I may say will change it, or your knowledge of it. She looked at Alana. You, please. Alana took the seat beside Mi-Chi, offering her left hand. Mi-Chi took both, studying the knight's calloused palms intently. When she spoke, Alana could feel a power in her words that was nothing like the Doi magic she sensed earlier. This was stronger and untamed. He waits, old Chichal. Mi-Chi's voice was harsh. He knows you have come for his prize. He will not surrender it if you are unworthy. Alana's friends gathered close, listening. Do you think it will matter if you await this storm's end before you set out? He has others to throw at you. I'm not trying to pass the middle of a blizzard, Alana protested. Then your desire, or whatever it is that drives you, is not enough. Mi-Chi's eyes were mocking. Make no mistake, hero from the flatlands. Chitral fights you with his snows and winds. All who would face him must battle on his terms. Or not at all. Dropping Alana's hands, the Doi looked at Liam. Dragon Man, do you bring your kitten to us for testing? You may not want a grown cat. I don't bring Alana anywhere, wise woman. She picks her own road. Mi-Chi stood, shaking. one of her companions came to support her. Do not forget that, dragon man. Her voice rasped with exhaustion. She is a champion, like you, but different. Always different. The Doi helped her to her rooms. Alana rubbed her hands on her breeches. They still tingled with both Michi's Doi magic and the other magic that had spoken through the fortune teller. It sounds... I don't know. I'm not a hero. Not yet. Ray slung an arm around Alana's shoulder. Glad to hear it. Come on out to the stables and we'll practice some kick fighting. The worst of it was that Alana believed Michi. Or she believed whatever had spoken through the Doi woman. That surge of weird magic was impossible to deny. Just what is sitting up in that pass, waiting for me to come after the jewel? She asked herself, time after time as the day ended and the next crept on. The blizzard continued to blow outside without showing any signs of letting up. She thought about just going home, but at this point, something inside Alana balked. She knew there had to have been other times in her life when she'd failed to complete something she'd set out to do. She couldn't remember them, however. And she didn't want to. Furthermore, she did not want her search for the Dominion Jewel to become the time she would remember that she had started something and had given up. Almost in spite of herself, she began to remember what she'd known as a child in Chabond, about survival in the snow. She was peering through a crack in a shuttered window shortly before twilight of the third day at the inn, when she felt someone come up behind her. She knew it was Liam and didn't turn. I think the storm's dropping, she said, trying to hope. Liam turned her around, gripping her shoulders tight. Don't even think of it, he warned, and don't make your eyes wide and ask what I'm talking about. I'm not Karam. Your tricks don't work well with me. That made her angry. Maybe Karam lets my tricks work with him, and I don't know what you're talking about. Then why'd the innkeeper tell me you were asking about snow gear? He gave her a little shake. Do you think you're immortal? That's a killer blizzard. Entire herds are out there frozen in their tracks. Maybe that gift of yours could shelter you from the little blows in Tortal. But this is the roof of the world, and you will die. I'd never attempt it, and I forbid you to. Years of training stopped her from hitting him, although she'd never wanted to as much as right now. You don't know what I can do, Iron Arm. Her voice was icy as she jerked out of his hold. I resent you acting as if I'd do something stupid if you weren't around. And wouldn't you do something stupid? He snapped. Sometimes you act like you have no more sense than the kitten I named you. Yeah, telling somebody you forbid them is just like giving them a dare to do it. Especially with Alana, someone as stubborn as Alana. I mean, seriously. Stubborn and rather vengeful. That was unfair, and they both knew it was unfair. Liam couldn't apologize. Alana couldn't forgive. They were coldly silent through dinner, and the others retreated to their rooms immediately after. Rather than witness this quarrel, Liam stayed to talk with the Doi, and Alana went upstairs to the faithful. "We're not gonna work this out," she told the cat as she undressed and got into bed. "We're too much alike, I guess." Then she began to cry because it hurt, in spite of her knowing why things were going wrong. Faithful nestled beside her cheek, purring comfortably. Alana was asleep by the time Liam came to bed. She didn't feel him gently touch her tear-blotched cheek. The dream was so clear it scared her. Jonathan stood beside a coffin that held his mother, Queen Lyanne. She was not strong. Roger stood on the opposite side of the coffin, his face emotionless. Her time had to come. John's eyes were tired. She was healthy once, before you got sent the sweating sickness, before you tried to kill her with your spells. That was another lifetime for me, Roger said. Tom was a shadow at Roger's side. I have no more magic. Jonathan's cousin went on. I did not kill her. Jonathan looked at his mother's face. I know you didn't. Behind John in the shadows stood George. His eyes were fixed on Roger. Alana's eyes flew open. It was very late. Liam was asleep, and the hearth fire had burned down to the embers. That's it, she thought grimly as she slid out of bed. I've wasted enough time. I'm going to claim that jewel and go home. Are you sure? Faithful asked as he settled on Alana's pillow. This is crazy, she whispered as she dressed. Liam slept peacefully, not hearing her preparations. That doy fortune teller was making fun of me. Grabbing the bag that contained her next layer of clothing, she pointed to the door. No, replied Faithful. Someone has to keep him asleep. He began to purr. A white, shimmering glow rose to cover him and Liam. In the hallway, Alana shivered as she exchanged the clothes she'd put on so quickly. Her garments made of silk, shirt, hose, and gloves. The next layer was wool, leggings, stockings, another shirt. She had begun to sweat, but she knew outside things would be very different. Discarding the bag and carrying soft-soled trapper's boots, she tiptoed out of the inn, into the passage that joined house and stables. Underground hot springs made it possible for the inn to stay open. The stables were warm, and her clothes too warm. Alana cursed the heat until she spotted the stable boy, asleep in a pile of hay. When he stirred, she touched his forehead and told him to sleep, putting her gift into it. Moonlight pranced when she saw her mistress, but Alana shook her head. Not tonight, girl. Next to the stable doors were the 3 large bins the innkeeper had described for her. The one marked in red contained heavy winter gear in the largest possible sizes. The yellow one held medium sizes, and the green was for small. Opening the last, she pulled out the next layer of clothing. Everything was doy make. Leather jacket and trousers, lined with fleece, a vest filled with goose down, a knitted face mask, goggles. She used her burnous for a headcloth and her own fleece-lined mittens. From her belt hung lightning and a double-headed axe, with a special blade for ice. Over it all, she wrapped a fur-lined cloak. Scanning the racks of snowshoes hanging over the bins, she selected the smallest pair and fastened them over her boots. I hope I still remember how to use these things. Standing, she took inventory. Had she left out a single piece of clothing or a single tool that might help? If she had, she couldn't remember it now. Gently, she brought up her gift, feeling every stitch she wore with it and binding the stable's warmth to every layer of clothing. She fixed it there with a word of command, just to be safe, and sealed it all with the ritual. So mote it be. Heat settled over her like a blanket. Drawing a deep breath, she opened the stable door, a crack, and passed through. Before she closed it, she sent a bit of magic back to the sleeping boy, so he would remember. He would wake in 5 minutes and bolt the door. The stable yard held drifts of only a foot or so, protected as it was by the inn's high containing wall. She found the gate and opened it, bracing herself for the first unrestricted blast of the storm. When it came, it almost knocked her over. Slanting her body into the wind, Alana passed through the gate and pulled it closed. Wind made her gasp with its sharpness. Icy daggers bit into her chest as she started to shiver. Cold. A part of her wailed, "I hate the cold." Alana forced a foot out in front of her, trying not to think of ice or wind. She stepped again, shoving her shoed foot down. Step 2. She could barely see in front of her. How would she know which way to go? She raised a foot and brought it down, moving forward against the wind. Third step takes all. Somehow she was moving, given what she already knew, that whatever ruled the past was going to make this as hard for her as possible. She walked directly into the wind. She hadn't used snowshoes much in the years since she'd left Trabond. It took her a few minutes to make her legs and feet remember just how they worked. Long steps, lift the shoes clear of the snow, then put them down. Stop every 6 or 7 steps to shake off the snow that piled on top of the broad, flat shoe. It was hard work for her leg muscles, but she welcomed it. She welcomed anything that took her mind off the cold. Even her gift couldn't ward off all of it, and her magic was burning up dangerously fast in the attempt. Was she mistaken? Or had the ground begun to rise? She wasn't mistaken. With a thump, she collided with a tall stone pillar, the one that marked the point where the road left the valley floor and climbed into the pass. Alana sheltered herself in the lee of the rock for the moment, panting with the effort it had taken to get this far. On a stormless day, this walk would have taken me 5 minutes. How long have I been out here? An hour? She pushed away from her shelter and into the wind again. A sudden gust shoved her to her knees, clenching her teeth. Alana got up and went on to ram into a tree. She stumbled and fell on her back in the snow. Afraid she'd get buried in snow if she stayed in one place too long, she struggled up again, missing words she'd forgotten she knew at the clumsy snowshoes. Inspiration struck. She seized a tree branch and hacked it off with her axe to form a staff. Miash didn't have to put up with anything like this to get the jewel, she thought, grumpily as she shook the snow from her shoes and set off once again. She stole it from a nice, warm vault. Now she tested the ground ahead with the wood, always heading face first into the wind. She decided she'd rather face a dragon than the storm. I mean, all she has to do is turn around and face the dragon at the end, right? Bad joke, I know. It helped her recite poems as she walked. First she went through those the Mithrans had taught her in the palace. When they ended, she started with those taught her by foot soldiers, thieves, and hostlers. She was halfway through The Tireless Beggar, a song that had almost gotten Karam into trouble in Barat, when she had ran out of voice. Stopping to rest, she wondered how far she had come. Her internal clock said dawn was still a few hours away, and that she'd been at this almost 2 hours. The innkeeper had said it was 2 hours hard walking from this door to the top of the pass. But under these conditions, Alana knew it might take her an extra day to cover the same distance. I wonder if I can sense the jewel. She reached for her gift and stopped, feeling afraid. While she'd concentrated on pushing ahead, her gift had poured itself into the effort of keeping her warm. It was dangerously low and flickering, burning itself up against the killer's storm. She couldn't turn back. It would be gone before she reached the tree, let alone the valley. Alana climbed on. She thought wryly that she couldn't even blame Liam for forbidding her to climb and making her determined to do it. She was a grown woman, and the only person who had ultimate control of her behavior was she herself. Serves me right for losing my temper, she told herself. Carefully, she began to cut back the areas of her warmth spell covered until it was in force only around her feet, hands, and face. Trying to ignore the increased bite of cold on the rest of her, she plowed back into the wind. It took 5 minutes of uphill walking before she realized that the wind had dropped. Halting, she looked up. Drifting snowflakes were all that remained of the blizzard. She slipped up her goggles and turned to look for her tracks. They lay behind her, following an eerily straight line as far as she could see. A cold that wasn't winter brought raced up her spine. Her trail should have swung back and forth in the snow. Instead, it looked as if she could have drawn it with a straight edge. I don't know if this is good, she murmured. With the wind in my face, at least I knew where I was headed. Looking again at her tracks, Alana shrugged and set off again. As her gift burned lower and lower, staying in motion became a vital concern. Every few feet, she'd look back to make sure she kept her earlier course before she opened the pass. Opened the pass, white and smooth along the road. Overhead, the clouds broke up, revealing a sliver of new moon. The night was very quiet. The only sounds those of shifting snow and cracking rock. Suddenly she heard in her mind a voice as terrible in its way as the goddesses, filled with tumbling boulders and rushing streams. She dropped to her knees with her hands over her ears. It did no good. So, you have come this far. Wait,
So, no.
So?
No. Yeah. Ooh. Fantastic. Good. So, you have come this far. You took your time about it.
Alana couldn't reply.
Look to your left.
She obeyed. The line of light stretched up the wall of the pass, over broken rock and pools of snow and ice.
The thing you came to take is at the end of this road, as am I.
The voice. It had to be the voice of the being that Michi had called Old Chichal was gone. Alana listened apprehensively for a moment, then remembered. The cold's danger and scrambled to her feet again. Drawing a breath, she returned her away from the smooth path, which lay so invitingly before her. She strengthened the spell on her hands and feet, drawing it away from her face and wondering how long her gift could hold out even now. She was sleepy. A nap would be. She shook off the cold growing spell and made for the slope, stopping only to remove the snowshoes and strap them to her back. Her temper came back with a rush. Not Liam this time, but at Chital. Am I supposed to entertain you? She yelled, climbing up into the rocks. Where I come from, it's considered honorable to kill a victim outright, not play with her first. There was no reply, but she didn't want one. All she really needed was the heat of her anger. She unhooked the axe from her belt once again, using it to pull herself up. Her foot broke through the crust in the snow, and she went down, crying out as her leg got stuck between two rocks. Carefully, she pulled herself out into more trustworthy ground, using the ice blade on the axe. When she tried the leg, it throbbed, but held. Are you enjoying this, Chitral? No answer. On she climbed. Within a few feet, her staff slid on a hidden bit of ice. She struck the ground with her knees, biting into her lower lip. Lana grabbed a handful of snow and pressed it against the mask, over her bleeding mouth. Adding another hurt to Chital's account, she rose and went on. She knew she got hurt so much now because weariness and agitated nerves interfered with her judgment. The best solution was to stop and rest for half an hour. But she didn't dare try that. The best solution was to stop. Instead, she started to sing The Tireless Beggar. She finished it and sung halfway through The King's New Lady when she stumbled into the cave. Her gift flickered and died, leaving her with only a trace of its fire. She'd used it up. Going home will be very interesting, she told herself as she looked around. There was a larger cave behind what seemed to be a small antechamber, and she went into it. Chitral's line of lights ended here, in a large chamber with walls that glowed a dim, eerie yellow. At the opposite end was a tunnel. All right, Chitral, she yelled when she'd pulled down her mask. I'm here.
Then prepare yourself for combat,
Came the nerve-shaking reply.
You asked for something you can fight. I will oblige you.
The air in the cave was cool, but not cold. She began to strip. Giggity? Preparing herself mentally, she peeled everything down to her woolen layer, leaving the clothing in a pile on the cave floor. Her mind took a careful inventory of her physical condition, and she was unhappy with what she found. She'd never taken on a fight in worse shape. Nothing to it, she thought as she unsheathed lightning and loosened her arms. Next time I go after something, I hope it's in a dusty corner where no one sees or cares if I take it. I did ask for this. Something padded toward her in the tunnel. Moving into the center of the cave, Alana set herself. When it came into the light, she understood it instantly that Chital had assumed this form. She couldn't say how she knew it, but she did. He'd come as one of the great rock apes that inhabited the roof of the world. Incredibly shy of people, they were seldom seen, and they never carried short swords as this one did. The blade was black iron and very primitive, but Alana had no doubt it would do the job intended for it. Oh gods, she thought as the ape squared off against her, his deep eyes bright with intelligence. I'm in for it now. It swung and chopped, forcing her back. She moved warily, her tired muscles sluggish at first. He jabbed. Alana countered and thrust, making the ape skip away. Now wasn't the time for fanciness or art. Now was the time to just stay alive. At least the knowledge of a fight sent adrenaline coursing through her body, putting a stop to the tremors of exhaustion. The ape pursued her, hewing with the short sword as if it were an axe. The long hours with Liam began to show as Alana automatically dipped, swerved, and twisted, keeping out of the ape's reach. He could do as much harm with a hand as he could with his blade. She made him wary of lightning. Her sword nipped and bit at him, leaving his fur dotted with blood. Her injured knee buckled, and the ape's sword scourged her from collar to navel, cutting through the wool and silk to leave a shallow, bleeding gash. She faltered and lunged in, chopping at the ape's neck. He roared and smashed back with his unarmed fist, catching her on the elbow. Alana fell forward and rolled out of the way. Her arm went numb. Lightning dropped from her fingers. Getting up, she staggered back as the ape picked up her sword. He peered at the gray light shifting under the steel skin. You did a work of art. Wait, what? No, wait. That.
You did a work of art when you made this.
As much as she might want to, she couldn't react to the pain of his voice in her head. Not unless she wanted him to kill her, as she covered her ears. She wondered how he even knew lightning had once been two swords, and that she had combined them to make one unbroken blade. The ape tossed the sword behind him, where it lay near the far wall of the cave.
I suppose you did it only because you wanted a whole sword you could command, not because the magic was beautiful for its own sake.
It was true, entirely. He gave her no chance to answer as he attacked. Alana couldn't think, couldn't worry if her body might give out. She ducked and dodged. When he gave her an opening, she executed one of the jumped kicks Liam had taught her, slamming into the ape's shoulder and making him roar. When he swung to chop her down, she was away and circling. She sought her chance and flew in again, hitting the same shoulder. It was his blade arm that she focused on, kicking every chance she had while keeping out of his range and grip. The fourth time she hit that arm, she kicked lower, into the same muscle he'd hit to make her drop lightning. The iron sword fell to the cave floor, and Alana went for it, her hand closed on the hilt. Pain seared her hands and arms, locking her muscles together. She screamed, her throat tearing with the cry. It hurt worse than anything she could remember. She held on. She couldn't let go, and rolled to her back, pointing it at the advancing ape. Crying with the pain, she yelled, "Don't! I don't want to kill you! Keep the jewel!" The ape stopped a foot beyond the sword's point, looking her over curiously. Alana didn't know better. She just sworn he smiled. Reaching forward, he plucked the sword from her freely bleeding hands.
You're a funny little thing.
His voice hurt much less this time, which puzzled her. He seemed to have changed his mind about killing her. He didn't choose to explain. Instead, his thought voice went on.
I suppose you have no idea why you are compelled to seek this jewel.
Alana cradled her palms against her chest, too tired to rise. It's for the glory of Tortal. Her throat hurt from screaming. There isn't a nation existing that can't profit from the Dominion Jewel, and bringing it home would be the glory of the knight who brought it. If it's yours, though, it's yours. Now that I think of it, I don't know how the famous heroes of the past were able to take things from the entities that guarded them. Not if they were as noble as the stories claim. When you look at it, right, it is stealing. The ape shook his head, plainly amused. In a hand that was empty a moment ago, he offered a many-faceted purple gem. When she stared at him without moving, he placed it on her chest.
What use have I for a jewel?
His outline turned blurry. Are you one of the gods? She asked. As he began to fade, suddenly she had 100 things she wanted to know from him.
No, I come from before. They are guards of children to my brethren and me.
Alana could barely see the ape, and the air was getting perceptibly cooler. She scrambled to her feet. Then who are you?
I am this place, and these mountains. I suppose you might call me an elemental.
Now his voice began to fade. How did you come by the jewel? She struggled to put on her clothing, trying to ignore the pain in her hands. The jewel she stuffed into a pocket.
It finds its way to me from time to time. Not often, but now and then. I made it, and I keep it because I like to have company. I shall be entertained by your visits for centuries of human time. You mortals are quite interesting.
She could feel no sense of him at all when she finished dressing, which may have been just as well. She was not sure she liked the idea of being entertainment for anyone, elemental or no. She found her way to the mouth of the cave and looked out, clinging to the rim of the opening. Dawn was coming, and she had no way to return to the inn. No wonder he gave me the jewel, she muttered, sliding down to sit on the rock floor. I'm going to die here anyway. She knew the idea should bother her, but it didn't. Her eyelids were getting heavy, and she barely noticed the cold. Pulling her cloak over her face, she went to sleep. She was warm, all of her, not parts. She could smell clean linen and herbal salves. Forcing her eyes open, Alana wondered how long she'd been out. Never again. Her voice was harsh in her ears. I won't spend another winter in the cold. Her eyes watered as she tried to look around. You could have fooled me. The deep rumble was Liam's voice. If a man went by the way you act, he'd think you live to freeze. She sighed. I'm sorry. She whispered. He was slowly coming into focus, and she wasn't surprised to see that his eyes were pure emerald in color. Sorry? His voice cracked on the word. I'm sorry I had to go into the blizzard at all. I wasn't given a choice, remember? You had your god's cursed cat witch me. Alana tried to push herself upright and winced. Her hands were heavily bandaged and throbbed under the weight she'd put on them. Iron Arm, stop it. Aren't there times when you act alone? This isn't the same. Of course dang it isn't. People like us have to know when to break rules. This was one of those times, and I was right to do it. I am sorry I hurt you. Chitral didn't leave me much of a choice. He walked out without looking at her. Thayet came in a few minutes later with a pitcher of mulled cider. A maid followed with a tray of food, and Alana's stomach growled a welcome. Seeing tear stains on Alana's face, Thayet said, "The dragon will be all right." She poured a cup of cider and helped Alana to drink it. "He was worried sick about you. We all were." "The jewel?" Alana didn't want to talk about Liam. "Where is it?" "Under your pillow. Can you manage a spoon?" Alana looked at the bowl of porridge, dotted with dried fruit and cream. "I'll manage if it kills me." Unfortunately, she couldn't handle a spoon. Thayet fed her, ignoring Alana's protests. "You've been asleep almost a week," the princess said. "The storm was over when we woke up." "You were out there when it stopped?" Alana nodded. "There was a tremor of some kind, a little earthquake, just after dawn." Thayet continued. "When it was over, the pass was clear. The innkeeper and some of the guests ran for the temple at that point, I think. Remember the doi who were staying here? They went out and brought you down, slung over a pony. They said they found you in front of a cave near the top of the pass. You were a mess." "Can I talk to them?" Alana wanted to know. "Thank them?" Thayet shook her head. "They're gone. They left when you started to get better. Murray says they don't like to be thanked. Did the healers say how I am?" Thayet put down the spoon. "You'll have a scar from your neck to your abdomen, right between your breasts. Your hands will mend. They said you'd do better once you woke up and used your own gift on them." Reminded by this, Alana felt for her magic and found it. Thayet began to tidy up, saying, "The doi healer said your hands will always know when it's going to storm. Old soulsman and their soulsman?" Okay, I'm making up words. Lovely. "Old swordsmen and their scars know the coming rain," Alana quoted. It was a common saying. "I suppose I had to pay for this somehow." "Was it worth the price?" "I don't know." Alana drew the jewel from beneath her pillow and looked at it. The gem fit neatly in the center of her palm. "Thayet, do you want this? For Saturday? Seems as if you need it more than Nartal does right now." She offered it to the princess, who stepped back with an odd look on her face. The jewel began to shimmer with an internal light until Thayet pushed Alana's hand away. "No female can hold the Saren throne," her voice was soft. "The Book of Glass forbids it. Children hear tales of other lands, less wise than ours, who come to grief because they let a woman rule. The chiefs of the Hauma, the Churi, and the Rede are women, but they're Khmer. And everyone knows Khmer are savages. Nartal isn't like the Khmer, but it isn't that bad either," Alana said. The bitterness in Thayet's voice hurts. "All my life I've been worthless, the one who should have been a male and an heir. My father was kind in his way. I took after him in looks." Thayet rubbed the arch of her nose, but he never forgot I wasn't a boy. Every morning the daughters of the goddess and the Mithran priests have orders to pray for Ajin Vilima in their daybreak services. Alana swallowed. If he'd loved his daughter, how could the warlord have humiliated her like that? "Thayet, I'm sorry." The princess didn't hear. "I'll tell you something else, Lady Knight. In Nartal, You lied about your sex and kept it a secret for years. But when the truth came out, you were allowed to keep your shield. We heard about you at my father's court. The majority opinion was that you should be burned, although one group held out for death by torture. Wyatt put the tray beside the door. I thought Tartal sounded like paradise. It's certainly an improvement on my father's palace, or the convents. It has to be better than what I get if I return to Serene now. You didn't have to tell me any of this. Alana slid the jewel beneath her pillow again. A simple no would have worked. The princess's face had been hard and distant. Slowly she brightened. A simple no? She repeated, amused. Alana, you're very dear. You're an incredibly high-minded person. Have you noticed? You take duty and responsibility seriously. If you believed I'd turn my back on Serene for a whim or a fit of temper, you'd lose any respect you have for me. She put a hand on the knight's shoulder. Before I met you, I thought the women of our class were useless. Those who go to Shang are commoners. Noble families chain their daughters into their rooms rather than permit them that life. The Khmer have no one of noble blood. Only people who can earn their honors. But you and I come from overbred families. Good as ornaments and nothing more. And you are far from useless. Alana blushed. Yet you're flattering me. It was easier for me to rebel than stay and make something of myself. Why didn't I go to a convent school and prove ladies are more than ornaments that way? Thiet's look was skeptical. What I'm trying to say is that I look forward to creating my own life. In Tartal, I can, because I'll be without rank or title. She sat on the bed. I'm going to start a school for the children of commoners. Once I sell my jewels, I'll have plenty of money to do so. Alana, who had different plans for Thiet, said hastily, I won't cast you adrift when we're there. You'll be our guest. Tom's and Miles and mine. The school's a grand idea, but there are ways to start one. Does she still do that? Make a school? Yeah, she does. She's the reason why in Dane's time that there's schools for commoners to learn how to read and write. And then of course there's the Queen's Riders, which is for commoners only to become part of that contingent of fighting force. So she's put together a few. But she was the leading force of everyone getting a basic education. Thiet shrugged. Look at me. I'm rattling on when you just woke up. Firmly, she tucked the blankets around Alana. Try to sleep some more. She left, carrying the tray. Sleep was the last thing Alana wanted. She'd had a week of it. In an effort, she threw off her blankets and stood, leaning against a bedpost for support. She took inventory. Twisted leg, stiff but painless. Assorted bruises, fine. Gash on her chest and bitten lip, cleanly healed. Eyes teary, but working. Hands. She didn't want to think about her hands. Not bad, considering. She dressed in garments that could be pulled on. Buttons and buckles were more than she could handle. She tucked her feet into slippers and clumsily ran a brush through her hair, keeping a watch for well-meaning persons who might shoo her back to her room. She escaped to the stables. The stable boy ran when he saw her, which was convenient. There are times in every rider's life when it is necessary to apologize to a horse, but Alana preferred not to have witnesses. It was too embarrassing. Moonlight tried to stay aloof as her night mistress entered her stall. Alana offered an apple stolen from the common room, stroking the mare and whispering compliments. Soon, Moonlight was nudging and nuzzling, plainly checking Alana's hooves, withers, and flanks. The salve on Alana's bandages made the mare sneeze. I wish Liam forgave this easily, Alana sighed. She looked up to see Faithful sitting in the gate. Are you angry too? I know why you meant. Moonlight and the others were worried, Kat said. I've been staying here since the dragon woke and found you gone. Horses are calmer people. They also don't throw things at cats. He climbed to her shoulder, draping himself around Alana's neck. Poor Faithful didn't really throw things, did he? Only when he saw me. Someone coughed. Karam had been grooming Anvil. Now he leaned against the bay's stall, watching. Are you gonna yell at me too? Alana asked warily. I should, I expect. I thought I'd raise you to treat blizzards with more respect. Ow, his voice is hurting my throat. I did. If you hadn't taught me how to dress, how to survive, I wouldn't be here now. Alana wanted so much for him to say it was alright. She couldn't bear it if she lost Karam and Liam both. Surely you're not telling me it was a simple matter of layering your clothes and using snowshoes. There was a mocking gleam in his eye. No, I used my gift. Karam, I didn't have a choice. If I had walked out of here on a sunny day, Chital, the being that holds the pass, would have dumped another storm right on my head. There was a safe way to get to the jewel. I would have followed it gladly. To her shame, Alana felt tears dripping down her cheeks. Please don't be angry with me. Karam walked over and put his arms around her. There now, Lioness, he whispered, holding Alana tightly. It's just hard to see you all grown up and doing mighty things. He wiped Alana's eyes with his handkerchief. Though I don't know why I'm surprised, since you always told me you would. He put the handkerchief to her nose. Blow, he said firmly. She obeyed, just as she had when she was 5. That's my girl. Buri, Thayet, and Karam came to share Alana's dinner, setting their own meals up on tables so they could eat dinner together. Since the inn's healer had examined and rebandaged her hands, Alana could use her own knife and fork. That alone lifted her spirits. Being fed made her feel helpless. Once the maids cleaned up, they roasted chestnuts in the hearth and told stories until everyone was yawning. Thayet was gathering up her beadwork when Alana said, If it's alright, I'd like to go the day after tomorrow. Are you crazy? Buri demanded. You just got up. You said yourself you won't be able to grip anything but a fork or a spoon for a week. Alana shrugged. I'd just like to sit out. I'll be alright. Meeting Karam's eyes, she added, Moonlight won't let me fall. Shaking her head, Thayet sighed. We'll see how you feel tomorrow. Buri stayed when the other two went out. I want you to know that it's an honor to ride with you, wherever, the girl said shyly. I just hope someday you'll tell me what happened. Must have been awful, the shape you were in. She grinned. The innkeeper won't take payment. Did Thiet tell you? The healer won't either. The grooms fight over who works on our horses. Especially yours. The maids cut up the napkins you use for lunch, so they can each have a bit. Marie, that's crazy, Alana protested. Ask them, Marie said impishly. They say you've parted the snows and walked up there to do battle with the god of the roof for his jewels. You think it's only jewel, not jewels. Be thinking you're battling for his testicles. All this will happen to you someday once you go out and start performing great deeds. Alana threatened as the girl opened the door. Buri winked and laughed. What nonsense, Alana said to Faithful. The inn has filled up over the last 3 days, was the cat's lazy reply. The innkeeper raised his prices. He expects a very good year. Several very good years, in fact. Word gets around fast. He yawned and tucked his nose beneath his tail. Muttering about human folly, Alana tossed the bedclothes aside and went downstairs. Since her friends had been with her until late, only a few people remained in the common room, most of them drinkers who were oblivious to anything. The innkeeper made surrender cleaning up. Liam sat before the fire in a low chair, feet crossed before him, frowning. I thought Shang warriors were too dignified to sulk. Alana hooked a stool over so she could sit in front of him. Go away, Lady Alana, he sighed, reaching for a tankard and draining it. The innkeeper came with another tankard and a pitcher, pouring mulled cider for them both before making himself scarce. Baffled and hurt, Alana pinched an earlobe to keep from crying. When she had herself under control again, she rasped, What's wrong with you? Are you offended because I didn't take your manly advice? Do you think I did something you couldn't have? Is your pride hurt? She looked at her bandaged hands. They were trembling. A massive hand gripped her chin, turning her face so he could stare into her eyes. Put yourself in my boots. His voice was soft, his face tight. I sat here wondering if you'd live, while all around me folk talked about those who died in the cold. Moonlight tried to break down the stable door. The hostlers had to drug her. Cram. I'd never want to see a man that drunk again. Thaya and Buri were fine. Why shouldn't they be fine? You witched them, just like you'd witched me. That's it, Alana realized. She had known how he felt about magic, and she had let Faithful spell him anyway. Liam would never trust her again. Are we finished then? She whispered. He let her go. She continued to watch him, waiting. I don't know, Ken. At the use of her nickname, she felt her chin tremble and her eyes fill. I am sorry. I know it doesn't do any good, but I am. If you'd awakened, you'd have stopped me. Liam nodded. His eyes faded from emeralds to a blue-gray she'd never seen before. Seems there's nothing we can do, right? I can't help the way I feel. Not about the gift. And you can't help but use it. Nor should you. A tool is meant to be used. After a moment, he swallowed and added, I'm sorry too. His voice was cracking. He probably saw that I had my things moved to another room. Can we be friends? Still? I promise it. He couldn't keep the relief from his voice, which hurt Alana more than anything he'd actually said. She made her excuses and went upstairs to cry over Liam Ironarm one more time. Two days later, they set out. Alana couldn't shake the sense that she had to go home, and her companions had caught the feeling from her. Most of the inn staff appeared sorry to say goodbye, although some, like the stable boy, hid their eyes in the doy gesture of fear and respect when they passed. Alana tossed a gold noble to the boy, wanting to make up for the fright her sleep spell had given him. He dropped it with a yelp, refusing to touch it until a maidservant had picked it up. On the road, Alana stopped for a last glance at Chitral Pass. The snow was nearly gone after the spate of spring temperatures that had followed her adventure. Green showed in the rocky walls leading up into the surrounding mountains. A party of choppers was headed into the Chitral as another company descended from Luhumu Pass. Alana wondered if Chitral watched her and waved a farewell in case he did. At night, they stopped in an inn they'd used on the way north, where before they had been treated no differently from the other wayfarers. Now they were honored guests. The news of Alana's feat and her possession of the jewel had spread rapidly. The inn staff made it plain they considered no service to be too small for them to give Alana and her friends. The landlord refused payment at first, but learned that the Shang Dragon could be very persistent. The company received the same treatment from the staff at the next inn, where they spent their second nights on the southern road. As their third day's ride drew to a close, Alana thought wistfully of a camp under the stars. It would be chilly, like any other mountain night, but they would have privacy. If the next inn was like the last two, privacy would be in short supply. Burdened as she was with the mending hands, Alana didn't want to mention it. The others would have to do her work if they camped. Burry halted when they saw the lights of the town ahead. I'll meet the rest of you in the morning, she announced. I'd rather freeze to death. She looked guilty at Alana. Sorry, Lioness. I forgot you almost did freeze to. Enough, Burry, Alana growled. I have to stay with Burry so she can protect me, announced Thayet. I'm tired of sleeping indoors anyway. The men looked uncomfortable, and Faithful yowled his disgust with overly attentive maids. Alana sighed in relief. Let's find a camping spot. They camped during the remainder of the ride to Port Udiapur, filling their bellies with game, wild greens, and oat cakes. Alana performed any magic, such as mending her tattered hands, out of Liam's sight. By the time they reached the seaport, Alana had shed her bandages, and her friends were comfortable around her again. She sometimes felt a pang of sadness when she looked at the dragon, but she knew their friendship would last far longer than their romance. Not so much. The forewarning coming up that's being shown here. Once they were settled at one of Port Udiapur's inns, the travelers met in Alana's room to discuss their next step. I mean, he lives on in her heart. True. No one was surprised when Alana said, I still can't shake the feeling that Karam and I are needed at home. Neither of us seem able to make contact with anyone, but I have this sense of trouble there. I'm thinking of hiring a ship. I thought you didn't like them. Liam sounded as if he didn't care one way or another. I was concerned about how you didn't think friends could be friends longer than they could date. Like, you haven't repeated that much to my dude, but just before, I understood before I clarified. Before I clarified, yeah, it was very much the not the can't be friends after dating, but the ending of the novel is more what I meant. Alana grimaced. I don't. Please, I'd like all of you to come with us. Actually, I'd prefer it, but you may have other plans. Buri and Thayet exchanged looks. We don't. Thayet said, I still want to go to Tortal. Buri nodded her agreement. Alana smiled. Good. She picked up Faithful, not wanting Liam to see how anxious she was. Things were so bad between them. The innkeeper says the Tortalan galleys in the harbor. The dragon's voice was quiet. I don't know if we can book passage. She's a diplomatic courier. But I can ask. Alana grinned. He'd said we. Would you? If you use my name, Trebond and allow, they'll agree. Liam nodded and went out. The others followed. Crammed to take their snow gear to the market and sell it now that they no longer needed such things. Thayet and Buri to see the sights. Alana stayed in her room to nap. She was roused from her sleep by a knock on the door. When she opened it, one of the maidservants dropped into curtsy. Excuse me, miss or lady, she began nervously. The gentleman here insists that he see you. She indicated a very large man standing behind her. The man stood with his back to the hall's torches, which meant Alana was unable to see his face clearly. He had no trouble seeing her, however. A familiar voice said, Praise Mithros, it is you! And Alana was seized up in an enthusiastic hug. Now she could see that his hair and mustache were black, the same color as his wickedly dancing eyes, and that his cheeks were tan and ruddy. Raoul? She whispered, not sure if she believed it. He grinned and she returned the hug with one every bit as fierce. Golden Lake, you sly fox! She pounded his back in delight as he carried her into her room and kicked the door shut. Now that just sounds like Raoul is trying to get some romance in for himself. Look at you. Look at you. He was as tall as ever. When he put her down, she had to tilt her head to see him. They were all hella gay with him, and then he was like, he was a lady, so it was socially acceptable, right? He was as tall as ever. When he put her down, she had to tilt her head to see him. Sit, so I don't have to hurt myself looking up at you. He obeyed, briefly, only to jump up to hug her again. It was 5 minutes or so more before either of them had calmed down enough to make a rational conversation. Faithful climbed into Raoul's lap to deliver his own welcome while Alana poured fruit juice for them both. Seeing him was almost as good as coming home. During her palace days, Alana's closest friends were all older than she was. Raoul, Gary, Jonathan, and sometimes Alexander of Shennanigans. The older boys were squires to Alana's page, and knights to her squire. They taught her palace ways and let her join them in adventures and scrapes. She had interest all but Alex to George, and they had advised her and looked after her. "What are you doing here?" she finally remembered to ask. "Last I heard you were riding desert patrols." Seeing his dark tan and the burnous draped over his shoulders, she added, "I see the desert agreed with you. Did you like the Vizier?" He grinned. "They adopted me. Not your people, the Bloody Hawk, the Sandrunners." He named a tribe far to the south of Alana's. "I like the Vizier a lot. All they ask a fellow is to ride and fight and do his share of the work. No paying compliments to people you don't like or anything like that." Alana grinned. Both Squire Allen and Sir Raoul were notorious for their dislike of social functions. "So, what brings you here now?" she wanted to know. "Is that courier vessel yours? Don't tell me you've turned diplomat." She sat on the bed as Raoul's grin faded. Raoul looked at the cup in his hands. "I'm no ambassador yet, but Mal's got your letter from Jirokan, the one where you said you might come here after the roof. He told John, and John sent me to bring you home. He's got messengers all along the Great Road, in case you change your mind and decide to return that way." Faithful sat beside Alana, who was now uneasy. Fuck John. Oh. "I didn't know John had the authority to do such things," she said nervously. "Thought only the king could dispatch the diplomatic ships." "That's right. John..." He stopped, looking unhappy. "Look, Alan. No, that's not right. Alana. King Rold is dead?" she whispered. Raoul nodded. "Let me tell it in the right order. I don't want to skip anything." Alana nodded, feeling stunned. "See, Her Majesty died around the March new moon. No one was surprised. Not really. She wasn't very strong after the sweating sickness. You remember. Then Roger tried to kill her with that image of his. After you left, Tom destroyed the image so she wouldn't be hurt by it, but the damage was done. It was only a matter of time. Then, the winter so bad, and everything else." He sighed. "Miles and Tom said you were in Barat right about when she passed on." "I wrote from there. But God, give her rest," Alana murmured. She'd never thought of the courts without Queen Leanne, even when she tried to envision the hazy someday when John would be king. Raoul gave Alana his handkerchief and continued. "The king never got over it. You know how they were about each other." Alana half smiled. The royal couple's devotion was plain to anyone with eyes. It was 3 weeks later, something like that. Near the beginning of April, he went hunting and got separated from the rest of the party. He was dead when they found him. An accident. It looked like he'd tried to jump. Remember that gorge? The narrow one about half a league above Willow Falls? Of course. She jumped moonlight over that gorge many times. It was very deep. The jump required skill and excellent reflexes, she whispered. So John's king? Not officially. The coronation set for the day of the July full moon. He's been acting as king ever since Her Majesty died, though. The king just wasn't interested. John must be heartbroken. He is. But he's never had a chance to get away by himself to mourn. Not with things the way they are. When Alana looked baffled, Raoul started to pale. You don't know, do you? Alana suddenly felt that something more was seriously wrong. No what, Raoul? You've had no word from Dortal this year? Nothing? The hill roads were almost impassable when Karam and I rode for Barat. What is wrong with him, she wondered. Raoul's hands were clenched so tightly in his lap that the knuckles were white. They were still bad in the south because of the winter rains. No messengers were coming through, and Barat's too far from the sea to get news from the ships. Your gift, though? I didn't want to contact anyone with it. I was busy, she admitted, blushing as she thought of Liam. What difference does it my being in touch or not make? By April, we were in Serene. No messengers could have found us then. There. This was before April. Raoul's voice was tight. Remember All Hallow? George told us you were with him in Port Kane. Alana's blush deepened. Tom was doing experiments. That's what he told everyone. He borrowed my gift. Her stomach sank. She sensed the worst was coming. She wasn't sure she wanted to hear it. We didn't know, Raoul said disjointedly. He kept it secret till late in February. It probably finished Her Majesty. You remember Delia of Eldorn? Raoul, please spit it out. Alana pleaded. He seemed not to hear. She'd been after Tom since he left, telling him that the really great sorcerers could raise the dead, playing off his pride. Sorry, Alana, but you know how vain he is. Tom finally lost his temper. It was all at a court ball. We all heard him. He told her he could do anything Din Marie, the Earthshaker, could do. Alana felt dizzy. Roger. He brought Roger back. And I'm gonna leave that to chapter 5 to next week. Because my voice is very slowly dying. Ah, yes, the hyena for sure wants to murder my sister. He's kind of hot. His lady is pissing me off, so I'll bring him back. I wanted a good fuck anyway. It's been confirmed by Tammy that they've been intimate. Right? I know he wasn't getting a good lay in the convent, but still. He's just like, I'll take anyone. Even if it's a dead corpse. Or a corpse that brought back to them down from the dead. So at least it's lively and not just lying there, right? Although that brings a new thought to the word boner. An uncorpse. Wait. No, people don't have dick bones. True, but people still for some reason call them boners. Who knows why? I was like, oh, I can design your PB with a dick bone. And I'm like, I remember humans don't have those. Yeah. Yeah, not really. You just have an act, or I could be the slime and just gets confused. Everyone calls it a boner, so it's obviously a bone hanging between the legs, right? Just rehashes the skeleton somehow. It would be funny. People wouldn't be able to say it's too lewd because it's just a bone. Just a bone. My voice is cracking on its own. It's being used. A baculum? What? I do not know that word. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. The bones, yeah. As soon as I googled it, I saw it. I went to a night market. It's just a craft show, but it's kind of like on the selling a lot of like witchy stuff and like a pagan witchy stuff and some macabre stuff like bones and such like that. And someone was selling a raccoon penis bone necklaces. Wait, did you get a baculum? I had the option to. I didn't, but if you ever find one, send me one. You want? Yeah, I had the option to. Raccoon bone necklace. Raccoon boner necklace, yes. Big bone me. Okay, next time I go to a night market, I'll look for that vendor. As proof of our friendship, I'll send you a dick. Wait, I already did that. Third dick. I gave you. You gave me a dick, yes. I gave you 2 dicks like a week ago. They're not a physical dick. Yeah, get me. Like on your mom. Yeah. The cat and the boning one. The boning one. The boning one. It's just the boning one now. The boning one? It's like, you're born through this. I mean, give me the boning one too. Maybe later on I'll draw JC's pee-pee. I mean, his pee-pee's just locked in a cage. I need to get back to that roleplay. I think my brain went too many ways and it went mushy. He still has one though, sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I bet like Switch lets him wash it sometimes. True. It'd be awfully rank, especially after sports practice. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Are we doing Baldur's Gate tomorrow, Foppin? I'm not thinking about your old. What? No. Are we doing Fault Baldur's Gate tomorrow? Open. You went out to the side and you went. Anyways, let me say probably. Okay. We'll probably see y'all tomorrow with Baldur's Gate. If not, then we'll be doing something else. I'm gonna say that. I'm gonna try stream tomorrow, whether one way or another. Maybe some Final Fantasy 14 if not, and some Dead by Daylight. Try to get some. I've been enjoying playing Chucky as the killer at Dead by Daylight. I really want to get back to doing some Final Fantasy 14 as well. But as I said, also I'm gonna try and work my way through all the Yakuza games, starting with 0 again. I got so close to the end of that, and then it just kind of something fizzled out about it. I kept my warrior low level for someone. Yeah. I need to make sure that my payment went through too, because my credit card expired last month. I only just learned of it. No, it expired in November. I only just learned of it end of December, so we'll see. Let's see whether my subscription has gone through or not. If not, I'll still renew it, of course. You don't own a house, right? No, that's all disappeared already. Anyways, stop rambling. Yeah, me too. I hope everyone has a good night. Your hands are cold. Boo. Boo to your hands. Go warm up. I'm gonna go find something else to drink because I finished what I brought up. And I'm thirsty. So I'm gonna jump off. Everyone have a good night. And I'll see you all next time. Bye.